Today's math lesson is about triangles. You can tell we're doing a lot more with geometry lately. We just spent some time learning about quadrilaterals, which is a shape with 4 sides, and now we're talking about triangles. So if we go back all the way to kindergarten, you can remember a triangle is 3 sides. So we're talking today about triangles. Please go ahead and find all of these colors. It's the colors of the rainbow plus black. And the lesson is 8.15. You can fill in the date and write the title. Pause the video so that you can get your journal completely set up like this. At the top I have triangles, and it says triangles are classified using a first and last name. The first name is by its sides, the last name is by its angles. So then you need to make this T-chart that goes almost all the way down to the end of your journal, but leave a couple lines at the bottom. And you can outline that T-chart in black and label it sides and angles. So again, go ahead and spend some time setting up your journal and push pause on the video and continue it once you have it looking like mine. So your journal should be looking like mine now. We're going to be able to look at a triangle and be able to classify it, to give it a name, a first and a last name. Just like you go by your first name and then followed by your last name, sometimes we go by our last names followed by our first name. So if you think about it in class, that is how you are organized in class numbers, is by your last name. So sometimes the last name comes first and the first name comes last, and that's okay. It's the same triangle. You can swap those names. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about the first thing I want to talk about with triangles, which is sides. I want to go down the sides right here of the sides and list the 3 names that a triangle can have, one of these first 3 names, okay? It will have a first name of one of these 3 is what I mean. The first one is kind of hard to pronounce, but it's my favorite one. We'll just start off with it. It's called isosceles. That is how it's spelled, I-S-O-S-C-E-L-E-S. But it is pronounced isosceles. So I remember it as I saw, and then a girl, I think of her name as Celise. So that helps me remember. Isosceles. Okay? We're going to give isosceles the color of red. If a triangle is isosceles, it means that it has 2 and only 2 congruent sides. Has 2. Remember that the word congruent means equal in length. Has 2 congruent sides. Okay, if it's isosceles, it's going to have 2 congruent sides. If it does not have 2 congruent sides, then it must have a different first name. The next name we're going to learn is scalene. I'm going to do this one green. I'm not going in order just because I think it's kind of fun to mix it up. Or maybe I should go in order. Red, orange, yellow. No. We're just going to do it in green. So the next one is scalene. And I think that one's fun to remember, that it's green, scalene. But here's how I remember what a scalene triangle is. A scalene triangle has no congruent sides. None at all. So has no congruent sides. That means none of the sides are equal. They are all different. So it has no congruent sides. What that means is you can do an equal sign with a slash through it. None of the sides are the same on a scalene triangle. So again, I like to think of it as scalene is mean. No sides are the same. Scalene is mean. No sides are the same. Okay, so we have a triangle that has no sides the same, a triangle that has 2 sides the same. What do you think the last one is going to be? I'm going to give you the name of it, and I bet you'll be able to figure it out. The other name that a triangle can be called as its first name is equilateral. So, thinking about that, how many sides do you think are the same on an equilateral triangle? Remember, lateral means sides, equa means equal. So equilateral means all 3 sides. All 3 sides are congruent. All all three. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. All three sides are congruent. Okay, that means they're all equal. So a triangle can have a first name of isosceles, scalene, or equilateral. Okay. Over here, a triangle can also be referred to by its last name, or its first and last name, or its last name, then its first name. But these are all of the names for a triangle based on its angles. So this is talking about the lines on the outside of a triangle, and now we're going to talk about the angle measurements on the inside. Did you know that all the angles in a triangle, if you were to add all of the three angles up, they will always equal 180 degrees? Always, every time. It's a pretty cool thing about geometry. We're going to write that at the bottom later, so I want you to remember that. All three angles of a triangle add up to be 180 degrees. All right, let's quickly talk about the last names that a triangle can have. You know angle names because you've been to 4th grade, so you should understand this. But we can have an obtuse triangle, a right triangle, and an acute triangle. Those are the three things: obtuse, right, acute. So we're going to do obtuse right here. And we'll use purple. Think about what you know about the word obtuse. It means an angle measurement that is greater than 90 degrees. If a triangle has an angle that is obtuse, it is automatically classified as obtuse. Doesn't matter about the other angles. If one of them is obtuse, then it gets the name obtuse. So it only has to have one obtuse angle to qualify. That's important to remember. Just for a little bit of information, it wouldn't be able to have more than one obtuse, because then you wouldn't be able to measure up to 180. For example, if one was 91 degrees, that's still obtuse. But if another one was more than 90 degrees, it's going to already beat 180 degrees, and you can't beat 180 degrees inside a triangle. So that's why only one obtuse angle. It automatically gets called obtuse. The angle mark for that, just so you know, is like a big opening arch. It looks like this. It kind of goes around the angle, and you'll see that later when we demonstrate that. But you need to kind of mark that. The next one is a right triangle. And I think you know something about right triangles. Well, you definitely know something about right angles. We're going to use orange for this one. If you were saying at home or to yourself that it is 90 degrees, you're right. If a triangle has at least one right angle, it classifies as a right triangle. So it only has to have, remember, it can't have more than one anyway, because then it would be, if it had more than one, it would be over 180 degrees, and we just said that it can't be. So it only has to have one right angle to qualify. And you hopefully know what that angle mark looks like. It is given as like a little box, right? Sometimes it can go in that direction. Sometimes it can go in that direction. But it is 90 degrees. That's super important to know. It's a 90-degree angle. If it has a 90-degree angle, then it gets the name of right, a right triangle. And lastly, obtuse, right, and acute. Oh, a cute little triangle. Have you ever learned that before? Acute means less than 90 degrees. So if it is an acute, if you want to give it this name, acute, this is what's crazy. It has to have all three angles be acute. Otherwise, you can't give it that name. Pretty interesting. Because remember, if it has something that's more than 89 degrees, like if it's a 90, it's going to be given the name of right. If it has an angle that's more than 90, it's going to be given the name obtuse. So in order to be acute, it has to have all three angles must be less than 90 degrees each. All three angles have to be less than 90 degrees each. Okay, they must be, that's important, has to be all three less than 90 degrees each, and the mark that's given for that is just a little tiny arch that's given on the angle. Okay, so just to recap before we go to the next video, triangles have a first and last name. The first names they can go by are isosceles, scalene, or equilateral, and the last names they go by, or you can swap it, right? It could be an obtuse, scalene, that would be fine. But you can have obtuse, right, or acute. All right, in the next video, we're going to learn how to draw some of these and how to classify them. But before we move on, I want to, at the very bottom, do that little reminder in a black cloud. So if you'll just kind of attach a black cloud to the bottom of that chart. This is just a reminder that all angles in a triangle must add up to 180 degrees. Always. There's no exceptions for that. All angles in a triangle must add up to 180 degrees. Always. Okay, go ahead and play the next video to find out what we're doing next.